Congress still has not passed another round of stimulus, and that is relevant to keep in mind when you consider that more and more people keep filing for unemployment. In fact, over 1 million Americans applied for unemployment benefits just last week. Every week we get a new update like this. And coronavirus continues to threaten jobs, even as Trump and his allies pretend as though we've conquered the pandemic. We clearly haven't. The death toll proves that, and the number of jobs lost also proves that. So in the week ending August 22nd, the advance figure for seasonally adjusted initial claims was 1,006,000, and that's according to the Department of Labor. Now there was a small decline from the previous week, but I mean, such a ridiculous statement too, right? There were 1,006,000 people who filed for unemployment. It is a little bit of a decline from the previous week. Oh wow, what a win. But let me give you more details. So far, we've only seen 1 week at the start of August with fewer than 1 million claims since March, when the pandemic started to take its toll on America's job market. Continued jobless claims, which count people filing at least 2 weeks in a row, stood at 14.5 million people on a seasonally adjusted basis. So the numbers are incredibly high. There is no federal moratorium on evictions. And this is pretty devastating for a lot of people who really don't know what to do. But what we keep hearing from Republicans is that, well, we don't want to encourage people to stay home and collect unemployment, but there are no jobs. That's the problem. And they're pretending as if that problem doesn't exist.
Yeah, and they're playing politics as usual, and I think this is a powder keg, right? I think that there are multiple Americas, but we're dealing with two different Americas right now. One where the political reality is not acknowledging the real reality outside of our doors. There's 45 million people without jobs that can't pay their rent. 1/3 of Americans couldn't pay their rent. So there's a powder keg that's brewing in this country, and our leaders are sitting back rhetorically letting them eat cake, right? Letting them figure out how they're gonna feed their kids. People are homeless. People are living in their cars right now. And I think the more and more you get sadistic people like Rand Paul, who thinks that this type of pain is what's necessary to get out of recession, as people start hearing that, I just think America's politicians are playing with fire here.
Yeah, they are. And when you see the unrest on the streets, I think that there are two issues at play. Certainly the brutality that Black communities in this country have been dealing with at the hands of cops, but there's also the issue of just abject poverty. People who have no hope in the future, financially speaking, and they're angry, they're upset, they're taking to the streets, and they're demanding change. And what's so frustrating is that we're not getting anything, right? We covered this story yesterday about Joaquin Castro and how he wants to launch an investigation into Mike Pompeo because he gave an RNC speech from Jerusalem. And look, I get it, it's breaking with precedent, there might be something illegal there, but I don't care. And I think the majority of people don't care and don't want to waste time on that type of investigation when we really need members of Congress, particularly Democrats, to fight aggressively to get some economic stimulus accomplished. They've totally given up. I don't know why they're not constantly in the press pointing fingers at Republicans. I mean, this is a layup for Democrats. If they really wanted it, it's a layup.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if the shoe were on the other foot and Republicans were the ones who wanted to accomplish whatever policy and Democrats were the ones who were obstructing? I mean, what would happen?
It would be a massacre politically speaking. But how often do you get an opportunity where the moral and the just thing to do is actually the politically expedient thing to do? They could win every seat in the House and in the Senate, as well as the White House, if they actually ran on policies that would help people. But they would sit back and eat ice cream out of a $20,000 refrigerator.
Right. Well, look, we want to be accurate here, Ben, okay? It was two $12,000 refrigerators that Nancy Pelosi showed off in the very beginning of the financial collapse in response to this pandemic. But I'm really glad that we got to see what kind of ice cream flavors she, yeah, exactly. It's just amazing. And I also want to note that by every measure, every measure that would typically be looked at to show where we are economically, we're failing. Yeah. But the stock market's doing real well, real well. Let's look at GDP. Gross domestic product registered its worst collapse on record between April and June as the effect from the pandemic lockdown was in full force. The revised drop is an annualized 31.7% economic contraction compared with the initial estimate 32.9%. Oh, thank God, wow. I guess things aren't as bad as we thought they were. Even with this tiny improvement, the second quarter was still the worst one on record for America's economy. But you wouldn't know that if you look at the stock market. And so for all the people who like to fearmonger about socialism, keep in mind that there's a lot of government handouts for the corporate world, right? The reason why these companies haven't completely collapsed is because the Federal Reserve is helping them out. But who's helping out the American people?
And if I could be so bold to use the saying, the best of times and the worst of times, because you really have people who are living their best time right now because the Fed has poured trillions of dollars into the markets. And you have the majority of Americans who are struggling, who are like, we have two totally different existences in this country right now. And the political elite have shown their allegiance. As long as Wall Street is fine, they behave like everything is normal. They have no urgency to help everyone. Their urgency was really only around helping Wall Street. And I think that's really the reason why we're not even hearing them talk about solutions for the average American.
Yeah, I just feel like they've completely given up, and you see it. I mean, I definitely see it in LA. We've had a problem with homelessness and lack of affordable housing, and it's been compounded by this pandemic. And we see it all over the place. And it's just devastating to see like the lack of representation people have in this country. The lack of, like genuine politicians who want to look out for the best interests of the common American. But instead, we have a few progressives who are trying to fight. We need more, which is why these congressional races where progressives are primarying these pretty gross corporate Democrats matter. And we need to get super active in supporting them and making sure that they're not smeared to the point where their candidacy is destroyed.
Want to win a free electric scooter? Well, our partners at Aspiration and Zoom Electric are making it possible. All you have to do is head to tyt.com/greensummer for your chance to win.